Basically, okay, Paul Verdine wrote an essay on Jack Parsons and the fall of Babylon. Basically, what they were trying to do, what Parsons and Hubbard called their little ritual sex experiment was the Babylon working, okay, and they spelled it strangely, but here's what it says in this essay. The purpose of Parsons' operations has been underemphasized. He sought to produce a magical child that would be a product of her environment, blah, 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 blah. It goes on to say that, in effect, Parsons wanted to claim the mantle of Antichrist for himself. What he really wanted to do with the Scarlet Woman, that would be Marjorie Cameron, was, with the magic rites of the Babylon working, would be, his goal was to bring on the apocalypse. So what they hoped to do, actually, was to get Marjorie Cameron pregnant through these various weird sex rituals they would do with a woman who would be the whore of Babylon, the mother of the Antichrist. And I think, as I've read stuff, and I'm not positive of this, and that would be the birth of the Antichrist. So Jack Parsons was a pretty weird guy, all right? So all we're saying in this whole thing is that these rituals, and again, they involve Osiris and so forth, and Orion, all we're saying is that these core beliefs that JPL started with have continued into the present day and are parallel to the beliefs of the Nazis and the Masons in some ways. Crowley was not real happy when he heard about this. What he said is, apparently Parsons and Hubbard or somebody is producing a moon child. I get fairly frantic when I contemplate the idiocy of these louts. So he thought this was a really bad idea because he believed that they didn't know enough about his writings and didn't understand things to a level that was deep enough for them to really be playing around with this sort of very, very powerful magic. One of the things that is not in Sex and Rockets or in the other book, Strange Angel, is an event that happened to Parsons a little bit later. Now, he was killed in the early 1950s in a very weird explosion at his lab in Pasadena. He had fallen into pretty much poverty. He sold all of his stock in several companies he founded, like Aerojet Corporation, didn't have a lot of money. And what he was doing is he was starting to do some work. He was doing some special effects explosion work for Hollywood, and he was trying to emigrate to Israel, where he would be doing some work for the Israeli government on developing rockets. People claim that then he, dropped something in his lab, started an explosion that killed him. But one of the things he did talk about was that he had this dream where he was taken to this place that he couldn't really name and shown ruins. It's called the city of Chorazim, I guess, and in that he was shown a symbol on the tower there, which once again we see the circumscribed tetrahedral symbol in 2 dimensions. It's this very bizarre, triangle circumscribed by a sphere. So Parsons and his friends, and of course there's also the circumscribed symbol of Sirius or Isis. So what they were doing is they were using this Enochian magic, which was calling Osiris to try to create the Antichrist so that they could destroy the world. Parsons had a lot of issues with Western society, so he had problems with it and wanted to destroy it. So what you have is a situation inside of NASA where you've got Masons at various levels, you've got SS, Nazi guys at various other levels, Johnson Space Center, Cape Canaveral, Marshall Space Flight Center, and over here at JPL in the unmanned programs, you've got Jack Parsons and Theodore von Karman and also other friends who attended this lodge in Los Angeles and had these very strange occult beliefs. So what you've got is the Masons, the Nazis, and the magicians basically running everything at NASA, okay? And the guy who's picking the landing sites, who is an Egyptian, whose father is an expert in the Egyptian stellar religion and would know exactly how to do everything we said they did. So then the question becomes, okay, why is this important? And I'm going to get to that in just a second. But the other question is, does this stuff continue into the present day? Well, in the late 1990s, we went back to Mars. This is just an amazing, I just put this in here because I think this is so cool. Somebody with a telescope took a shot of Mars over the horizon of the moon. And that's the South Polar ice cap right there, or carbon dioxide cap, or I forget which one that is. So yes, we did go back to the moon. It was called Mars Pathfinder, and it was in 1997. And they sent the little rover, Sojourner rover. And by the way, a Sojourner is, they claimed it was named after Sojourner Truth, who was a significant woman in history. I forget exactly what her history was. Sojourner is also a term that is applied to a Mason who has gone to war for his country. He's called a sojourner. So that, again, has a dual meaning. And when they went back there, they encased this little rover in this particular structure, which, guess what, was shaped like a tetrahedron. And then they decided to put it down on Mars at a place that was, guess what, 19.5 degrees by about 33 or 30. That's where it ended up, 34, almost 34 degrees, but the original landing ellipse was 19.5 degrees by 33 degrees. So again, we get the 19.5, we get the 33, actually embedded into the landing site. Now, when it landed, the Earth itself was at 19.5 degrees above the landing site. Then, really interesting, they waited until the Earth came down to the horizon, and then they started releasing pictures from the landing site. So it was a very interesting day when it actually landed. At that landing site, there was some weird stuff. A lot of people are going to say these are just rocks, and I think you might have a point, but some of these rocks are shaped kind of odd, and this one looks like a little tracked vehicle to me, similar to the Sojourner probe itself. If you look here, you can see some parallel lines, which almost look like a track, and it's encased in mud. These are various exposures of it. There are other pictures. There's a whole website called the Near Pathfinder Anomalies, NPAA, and they have tons of pictures of very, very strange looking stuff at the landing site. Because what happened was, right after Pathfinder landed and they started sending pictures back, John Holloman was on CNN and people started calling in saying, you know, that doesn't look like a rock to me. It looks like, you know, some sort of geometric stuff. Here's something that's called the hydrant by those guys. Again, it has some structure, mechanical structure. It's destroyed, it's damaged, but it doesn't look to me like a rock. Here's another, I think this is a metal-cased object. This looks like, to me, some sort of handle. I mean, it looks like you could reach in there and turn that handle. There's stuff like that all over these pictures from the surface. And notice how crappy they are, too. That always has surprised me. Richard actually has a good story about seeing some of the real stuff from there. Well, along the way, there were lots of pictures of Pathfinder that were taken, and one of the things that they did was to try to improve some of the quality of the images, is they created a new imaging process called super resolution surface modeling. And what they used to actually display this, what they used to actually sort of demonstrate how much better it would make a given image look, was the Great Seal of the United States of America, and specifically this double sort of star tetrahedron, which is on there. It's similar to the flag of the State of Israel. That's what they picked as their example. Now, the thing about the Great Seal of the United States is that it includes a pyramid with, you know, the Eye of Horus above it, or the Eye of Osiris. It depends on who you talk. It includes the eagle, which is, again, a symbol similar to the Scottish Rite. It includes this sort of a double star tetrahedron shape in there, 13 arrows and 13. So it was a really interesting choice to use as a demonstration for this kind of process. But what the process was able to do is it was able to get us better close-ups of the Twin Peaks. The Twin Peaks were these two mountains that were about a mile away from the Pathfinder landing site. If you look on the face of this, you can see what looks like a sort of lattice work going all the way up this. There's a little box right there, little boxes right there. It looks to me like condos, you know, on what was once a pyramidal mountain that was probably buried in some sort of refuse. I don't know how well that translates to the big screen. It looks great on my computer, though, trust me. Again, here's another shot. This is a color shot. Yeah, we're losing a lot of resolution, but there's this crisscrossing pattern on this mountain, which absolutely should not be there. And then there's this weird thing in the foreground, which I've argued, to me, looks kind of like the Sphinx.